Welcome to part 4 of our series, An Afternoon With. We've got a very special guest coming up on this webinar. Check out the previous webinars with David Fisher, the editor of TV shows like His Dark Materials, Doctor Who. We also had Carly Telford, the England and Chelsea goalkeeper, Terry Deary, the author of Horrible Histories. You can go and rewatch all of them at careers.tanfieldschool.co.uk. And I'll put that up on the screen at the bottom so you can see that, careers.tanfieldschool.co.uk. We had quite a few questions for our guest today, which we're always thankful of. So a big thank you to Calum, Jade and Anthony, Ebony, Joseph, Connor, Emily, Lucy, Emily, Dylan, Oliver and Mrs. Stephen for submitting your questions. If I don't get to your specific question, it might have already been answered or somebody else might have asked it, but I will try to get your question throughout the course of this interview. So we are really, really delighted to be joined by Craig Heap. At the 1998 Commonwealth Games, Craig became the first person to captain England to Team Gold. Craig fulfilled his childhood dream of competing at the Olympic Games when he was 21, where he achieved his personal best performance in the all-around final. Across his career, he's won 14 British titles. And some of you will know Craig because he's been into school a few times before. So I'm going to bring Craig in now. Craig, how you doing?
Hi, everybody. Yes, I'm fantastic. Thank you. That's a good intro, that. I quite like it. It sounds quite good.
It's amazing what you can find on the internet, isn't it?
It is.
It's amazing. You've been a big supporter of us at Tanfield School over recent years, and coming in to help us out with things like the awards evening. So it's great to talk to you, and I think it's only fitting that you're a part of this series because you've been coming in for a while and sharing this wisdom with us of your success and motivation as well. So it's going to be great to get into that. I'm going to kick it off, Craig, with a question from Connor. Question from Connor. So I'll play that on the screen now.
Hi, Craig. My question is, what inspired you to become an Olympian?
Great question, that, Connor. I would say what inspired. That's a really tough question, actually, because I never started doing gymnastics as an end goal to become an Olympian. I think I started doing gymnastics because originally I wanted to learn a few flips. My sister did gymnastics, and it was just to go and have fun. I think it was a lot later on in my career when I'd left home. I started centralised training with the British team, and I think in 1996 I was reserved for the Atlanta Olympics, and I think that was a real low point in my life. But also it was that motivation to make me even more determined to become an Olympian. So I think it was that setback and disappointment that motivated me to go, this is something I really want to do. Lots of coaches would have said when I was a young gymnast that I wasn't talented. Talent can be defined in many ways, whether you believe it or not. And we could spend a full afternoon talking about, is there such thing as talent, or is it just hard work? I think it's down to a lot of hard work. And lots of coaches said to me, Craig, you didn't have the talent to become an international gymnast, let alone an Olympian. But I think it was those comments that really urged and pushed me on to get there. And I think for me, it was about pushing myself to be the best that I could be and really see how far I could go. So an Olympian was not really in my sights. It was about just pushing myself along that journey.
It's interesting, and it's a theme that comes up and it's come up in every single one of these webinars, is that the failure has been kind of the big spur on for success. And we've seen it with Terry Deary talked about getting his books rejected by publishers. David Fisher got, when he was a TV editor, got sacked from his first ever job. And you see that kind of that failure. I think a lot of people when they come across failure see it as a sign that they shouldn't be doing that, and they back off from that and then maybe try something different. But actually, a common theme seems to be the people who are successful actually keep going in the face of failure? Is that been something that's been constant in your career, Craig?
Absolutely. And I think that's what's really unique about gymnastics, because actually you go to the gym and you're constantly failing because, I remember as a kid, I wanted to learn a back somersault and, I'd throw myself, it would be thousands and thousands of attempts of landing on my head, maybe on my hands and knees, putting my hands down, and then you'd have maybe that glimmer of a little bit better, and then you go backwards again, but then you'd go back and push yourself. And I think this is the resilience that we need as people, full stop. And for me now, in the various things that I do around work, and we'll probably touch on that later, it's that determination of not being frightened to fail that I believe makes me successful in what I do. I'm not successful if you compare me to how much money I've got in the bank, for example, because I know a lot of young people think about going forwards. Well, if I've got lots of money, that must make me successful. I think you really need to look at yourself and quantify what success is about. And for me, my driver has always been how far I could push myself, and not really about how many medals I won, how much money I had in the bank. It's always been, I think I can do a bit better, and that's what I really enjoy, the failure side of things, because I know that the next time I'll become slightly better and slightly better and slightly better, and maybe some people take 100 attempts, some people might take 1,000 attempts, and I think if you've got that resilience and that never give up attitude, and you can handle that, then you will get there in the end. And I think that is so crucial, not just about sport, but I think about life as well.
Yeah, when you were talking, I was thinking about, even things like schoolwork. If you're comparing yourself to everybody else in the class, oh, that kid over there, he's the top of the class. I'm better than him because he's lower than me. But actually, kind of what you seem to be saying is, actually, if you just focus on yourself and getting a bit better each time, that's how you achieve success. Is there something there about almost staying in your own lane and not focusing on everybody else around you?
Yeah, and that relates back to gymnastics as well. As I got better at it, and when I became British champion, I spent a lot of time as a kid going to competitions and almost being amazed by what everybody else was doing and just looking around, and then that would be a distraction for myself, and then I'd always finish low down, and it was only when I got better and older, and like you said there about staying in your own lane, I'd turn up into a competition. I had the same way I warmed up. I ignored everybody else. I just did exactly what I needed to do for my performance. And I also think now in the world that we live in, and especially for young people, we are constantly bombarded by what we think success looks like. And these things, as much as I love technology, mobile phones and social media, there's a curse to these, because actually you only see the positives. I think you only see people having a great time and life's a holiday, and it's people that go to the gym and they all have got amazing physiques, or they're all driving, really nice cars. And actually, it's almost like you're watching that, and I think that has a negative effect, because you look at yourself and go, well, I must be failing because I go to the gym and I don't look like that, and I don't drive a car like that, and I don't live in a mansion and all this sort of thing. Whereas I think if we concentrate a little bit more on what it is we have got, and we concentrate on what we're doing and be the best that we can be, then we can achieve amazing results. And I think that's where my advice to anybody in school, and I've said this before when I've come into Tanfield, about I made some really bad mistakes in school because I didn't stay in any lane. I was all over the place because I was frightened of failure. And I think people would look at me and laugh at me because I didn't feel comfortable. So it was easier to mess around, but actually I've done all right. Just imagine where I'd be right now if I would have applied myself a little bit more. And I think that's the key. I think if you knuckle down, you get stuck in, you get a good education, you're willing to graft. I think the word that we use a lot here is choices. You know, life will give you choices, and I think that's key.
Can we rewind the clock a bit back to when you were at school then, and just kind of go
Yep.
from there? And so, like, I'm the kind of the dream of being a gymnast. It's not what every young lad dreams about. Really, they want to be a footballer. They want to get into rugby. So how did gymnastics come about from you? And was it from when you were at school?
It actually came from my sister, because this happened in primary school. My sister was doing gymnastics, and I got dragged along one day by my mum to go and watch my sister. And unlike most other lads, and I was a bit odd because I didn't even really want to be a footballer. I didn't want to be a rugby player. I wanted to become a farmer, and my parents had a dairy farm. And what I loved about farming was it was a practical thing for me to do. I love being outdoors. As I said to you earlier, I've just come from outside and using my chainsaw, and I'm building something outside because I think you're academic or you're a practical person. And I think that's what school probably does. It gives you the ability to find out what you're good at. You know, whether you're going down the academic route or you're going down the practical apprenticeship route. I think that's really key, that you get an eye for something that you look at. So my sister did gymnastics. I got dragged along to watch her. But even then, my mind was, I'm going to become a farmer. You know, even in high school, and that was a bit of I guess, a cop out to mess around and not take it serious, because my dad and my parents would have employed me no matter what my qualifications were. And I remember my mum saying to me one day, she said, Craig, it's really important you get a good education, because you might not become a farmer. And I was like, shut up, mum, what you on about? You know, everybody in our family's been farmers. I'm going to become a farmer. And it was only when I'd retired from gymnastics at the age of 29 that I realised what my mum said was true, that I didn't want to become a farmer anymore, because I'd experienced all that the world has to offer, and all the different opportunities out there. And it's really difficult when you're 29 and you've not had a great education to go back. You know, and the young people that are watching this now, or will be watching it whenever, you've got an opportunity right now in school and education to change your life forever. It's a lot more difficult when you get older to go back. And actually, I think you can get to where you want to be a lot quicker with an education. And that's key. You know, you're there already, whether you like it or not, you've got to go to school, and why not make the most of it?
Yeah. Oliver has asked, how did you get into it? I know you've talked there about kind of following your sister along when you were in primary school, but as you went into secondary school then, and did you start taking it more seriously, or did it come back later on?
I would say it sort of became serious when I left school. I had a big decision. Was I going into farming, because that was the family business, or gymnastics? I still didn't think at this time I was potentially going to be an international gymnast. I thought I'd be a farmer. And sometimes we do things for such a long time that we're scared to give up. And there's a couple of times I thought about giving up doing gymnastics, but I was like, well, what else would I do? So when I left school, I managed to combine training and farming. The facility I was training at in Burnley, the leisure centre, wasn't good enough. So I had to find a better gymnastics centre. I ended up travelling to Manchester and doing an hour there, 6 hours training, coming back late at night, doing that 6 days a week. I did that for a couple of years. That was an horrific time in my life. I can use this horrific. The days were long. 6 o'clock in the morning till 10:30 at night. And I would imagine as a teacher, lots of students would probably say to you, not handing work in, oh, sir, miss, I haven't got time. Well, I think if you're really passionate about something, you'll find the time. And that time was really tough in my life, probably one of the lowest points. I was probably my most unhappiest. I felt like I wasn't pleasing anybody. I certainly wasn't pleasing myself. My dad was always on at me because work wasn't getting done on the farm. My coaches were getting on at me because I was turning up for training tired. And then a couple of years after doing that, I got invited to go and train with the national squad. And that was a big sit-down conversation with my parents. My mum persuaded me that it was probably the best decision if I was going to be a full-time gymnast, and definitely the best thing to do is that commitment that we talk about. I'm on the journey of the 10,000 hours of purposeful practice. If I hadn't have left home and fully committed to my training, I would have never got to the Olympics. And I think from all the other guests that you've probably spoke to, as well as the failure, they probably talk about that commitment, and I want to throw a question back to the students. All right. So think about that one thing you want in your life, that goal, right? And it's up here. All right, let's say it's up here. And think about your commitment right now. Yeah. And is it going to where you want to be? And what tends to happen with a lot of people, and it's not just young people, they have these massive dreams and aspirations, but the commitment's quite low. And when they fail, they feel disappointed. Well, it's not really fair, is it? Because those people that really commit and make all those sacrifices, they're the ones that deserve to be successful. And it's harsher reality, but it is like that. And we've to almost check in with ourselves to say, is my attitude and my commitment in line where I want to be? And this is a tough question to ask. You've got to look yourself in the mirror, and can you try harder? And I would imagine the majority of the students watching this, if they were honest, they could probably try that bit harder.
Yeah. What would you say? Because there'll be some students out there who don't, and I'm not just students, but adults as well, that still don't really know what they want to do in life, and they still haven't found that kind of that passion that makes them think that's what I want to do. What's your advice for them? Do you think just it'll come along, or should they be looking for that now?
Well, I'm 47 now, and I joke with my staff, and I'm not really sure yet what I want to do. I don't think, does anybody really know what they want to do? Does anybody really know what they want? And you say you want to live your life, and if you could have anything, what would it look like? What are the 10 things you want to do before you die? And I think a lot of people would struggle to come up with that because they've not taken that time. And I think it's age and it's process and it's experiences to go, actually, I've got myself into a position now with work that I really love doing what I want to do. Money's not the main driver. You need a certain amount of money to live, but I can certainly survive on a lot less than what I used to. But I've realised the things that I like. I'm quite a simple person in terms of what I like. I know what I like doing, and I think it's through our experiences that helps us become a bit more focused on what it is we want. And I think if you're not sure, don't stress about it. But what can you do to prepare yourself for the journey that is life? Yeah. And imagine you were going around the world traveling, right? And you've got a rucksack, and I give you a rucksack. I go down to the shop and I give you a big rucksack, and I say, we're going traveling around the world. What you're going to put in it? You're going to need a bit of everything. because I might take you trekking to the North Pole, or you might be on Bondi Beach in Australia. You need a bit of everything. And I think that's a bit like our resources that we have and our skill set as individuals. Yes, you need to be academic, and you need to be able to understand a spreadsheet and a profit and loss, but you also need to be able to cook yourself a decent meal, or change a plug, or build something for your kids when maybe you have a family one day. So I think as long as you're constantly upskilling yourself, then I wouldn't worry. I mean, I'm sat in my office now, and I'm just looking across the office, and it's a bit of a tip, to be honest. But on the bookshelf at the top, I brought loads of books from home, because my wife's kicked me out of the office because she's got her office, and I bet I've got 20 books up there around personal development, success, planning, you name it, and I've read them all. So I've constantly developed myself. So actually, I read a book about managing people. Well, in the past, I've always worked on my own. Now I have a business and I've got about 20 staff. Well, 10 years ago, managing people would have been of no interest to me whatsoever. But now I'm running a business and I'm employing staff. Guess what? That skill's coming useful. And being able to cope with pressure and stress, and dealing with customers, and thinking about the values for our business. The values from my business come from a fish market in Seattle, which I read years ago, and I thought they're really good values. And now I've opened my business and go, actually, of all the books I've read, they're the 4 values that I want to instill in the business. And I think if I am to upskill myself and develop myself, then I'd probably be scratching my head when I start my business going, right, how am I going to manage this team of people? How am I, what are the values? Have I done any business planning? How am I going to deal with tricky situations? And I think any time spent developing yourself is not wasted. You might not need it now, but you potentially will need it.
Yeah, I think that's so vital, isn't it, Craig? That investing in yourself, it's the most important thing that you can do. And I think a lot of us, and I certainly did when I was at school, I thought kind of when I leave school, that'll be it. And I remember going to university, and at the end of university thinking, that's it. I've no more education. But you soon realise, don't you, that actually unless you're in a mode of you've got to be learning all the time. You're going to be learning for the rest of your life. And if you don't realize that, if you don't prepare yourself to be a lifelong learner, you need to, don't you? It's when the last day of school isn't the last day of learning. And I think the sooner we realize that actually this what's happening at school is kind of what's going to be happening throughout my life. And I need to get good at this.
I totally agree. And I also think as well, one of the things that businesses taught me is almost I don't mind not being the cleverest person in the room, because I know I'm not that clever. I have staff that work for me been to university. I didn't go to university at all. But I think if you've got the confidence to listen to other people and knowing that you're not always right, you can get that advice in, and picking the right people for your team, and I guess the people that you spoke to so far in the afternoons have talked about surrounding yourself with a great team of people. That is crucial. Any Olympic athlete, any great business person, author, footballer, gymnastic teacher, whatever, is about having that perfect team of people around you, and having people with different strengths. There's no point having a team of people all good at the same thing. And I think that's really key for the young people when they think about going forward, and the planning is, how many people are they going to get on their team? And you're not going to get on with everybody. I wouldn't expect every pupil to get on with every teacher at your school. Like you say, school's about preparing people for life. But actually, how good is it if you can get the knowledge from that person? That's where smart people are. You know, I've worked with people in the past, and I've not always got on with them. But what I'm really good at is getting the knowledge from these people. Because if it gets me from A to B that little bit quicker, I've realised I'm big enough now and mature enough to go, I don't need to like you, but you've got what I want, and I can get along with you to get the job done. And I think that teamwork, people skills is crucial, really important.
Yeah, yeah, 100% agree. Just going back to some of the student questions here. Caleb asks, was there a person when you were young who you looked up to in terms of maybe it is another gymnast who you looked up to, or maybe somebody else that really kind of spurred you on?
Believe it or not, growing up, I had a mentor and I didn't realise. So we had the farm, and one of my dad's friend, he was a policeman, but he had a little farm, tiny. He had a field and a barn, but he was really interested in the farming life, and he used to come down to the farm all the time, help me dad out when he wasn't working in the police, and he was my best friend. I was a young lad. He was older than my father, and we became the best of mates. And I think sometimes it's really difficult to talk to your parents or close people, and he would always say to me, stop messing about at school, do this. And he had that influence on me, and he guided me, and if I was just getting out of line a bit too much, he'd try and put me on the right track. And I always found him really interesting because he would come down to the farm and tell me stories about the police. And I to be honest, at one point I thought, as a job, the police sounded really interesting because every day was different. And I think that's another thing. If you like variety in your life, that's what you need to think about when you've got a job. Is what job can give you that variety, and things like the police and the fire service as a practical person was something that I really thought, that's got an interest, something I might do. So I would say it was this guy called Raymond growing up who was, looking back, my mentor and my guide. And I think it's really important that we have those people around us.
Yeah, I remember somebody give me that advice a few years ago. Said get yourself a mentor, get yourself somebody who can do that for you. And I guess that's as an adult, but as a student, I guess it's finding those people in your lives who are kind of already mentors,
Yeah,
and that you can continue to learn from.
I think, and also it could be, it might be a parent, but I think like a family friend. What is it? The traits. If you think that you want to run your own business, your family members, somebody must know somebody that runs their own business. It could offer that mentorship advice. I mean, even the top business people have business mentors. And I think when we're young, we sort of see it as a bit of a failure to be asking for help. And I think probably the kids in class, I was one of those that would be too embarrassed to put my hand up and say to the teacher, I don't understand. And actually, what I should have done is wait till everybody left the class and then gone to the teacher privately and said, I need a bit of help. Because actually, that's why guys teaching it, because they want to help people. And I know for a fact nobody would say to him, I ain't going to help you, go away. I think they really appreciate that. And I think it's that asking for help, and that we're going back to that ability to learn and better yourself.
Yeah. So you left school. You were you were training. You got invited to train with the British team. Is that right?
That's correct. Yeah.
And so, kind of, how did it go from there? Because over the next few years, you won a lot of championships, went to the Olympics. How did that progress?
Well, to be honest, at the start, it didn't go that well. And that's another thing about commitment in life. Even when you're fully committed to your goals, you'll have setbacks. So I'd left home. I'd I made loads of sacrifices. I was training 3 times a day. From first session was at 7 o'clock in the morning. Then we'd have breakfast. Then we'd have morning training. Then we'd have lunch. Then we'd have afternoon training. About 6 hours a day, 6 days a week. And with all that, I failed to get to the Commonwealth Games in 1994, and I failed to get to the Olympics in 1996. So there was still quite a bit of failure, even when I'd fully committed. But I think, again, it goes to that determination and resilience to go, all this failure's got to count for something. And I think that made me more determined. I think the biggest breakthrough came in 1998 because I became senior British champion that year, went out to the Commonwealth Games, captained the team to their men's first gold medal. 1999, became British champion again. 2000 was the Olympic year. Even then, 7 weeks before the Olympic Games, I broke my hand in 2 places. So I didn't think I was going to go to the Olympics. Fortunately, I did. I went out there and got my personal best. And then I thought about retiring. And then I carried on for 2 more years, believe it or not, because my teammates had written me off and said I'd probably be too old to go to a Commonwealth Games in 2002 at 29. And that's always in the back of my mind. You know, that voice. I've lots of people telling me, you'll not do this, you'll not do that. Almost for me, that's a driver, that's a motivation. So I carried on for 2 more years to prove a point, it's a long time, 2 years, 6 hours a day, 6 days a week in a sport I really wanted to retire from in 2000. But I guess that's my stubbornness, and it's funny when we talk about that. I remember one of my other businesses. I have a bit of farming land back in Lancashire, which I bought, and I got an idea about turning it into an allotment site through just going past the garden centre in Newcastle, and they had allotments, and I went, oh, right, the land doesn't generate much money. I researched how much allotments made. I thought, that'd be really good. I went to see my local MP back in Lancashire for some support, and basically he said, you've no chance of getting allotments. I'll eat my hat. And I remember saying, on the way out, I said to him, somebody once said nobody from Burnley would ever go to the Olympic Games. And 2 years after that day, I opened my allotment site. It's been running for 5 years, and it's generating a secondary income from somebody that said to me, you'll not do that. And that's one of many things. Now I'm not saying every time somebody said to me, you'll not do that, I've gone and proved them wrong. It doesn't work like that, but I'll give it a good go to the point of going, right, I've given myself a time limit. I'll work as hard as I can, and maybe that's a non-starter, but I will give it my all. And that's just an example of that failure from gymnastics and being told that I wouldn't succeed, being transferred into another avenue of life. Absolutely nothing to do with sport, but it's worked, and that's what I hope the young people are getting out of this, sat there watching. It's not that whether I'm any good at French, and I'm not going to be speaking French in the future. It's that determined resilience that you're showing to get through your friends, to get a good qualification that might come back in 10 years' time when you have to dig deep. It's got nothing to do with the language. It's to do with how you applied yourself when things got tough.
Yeah, and kind of just on the back of that, Lucy asked a question about hurdles. It was a video, so I'll play it, and then we can pick up on it after we've watched it.
Hi, Craig. What hurdles did you have to face in your career of gymnastics?
And I guess you've mentioned a few of those hurdles. Maybe if you could just tell us the importance of them. So do you think, I'm just thinking when you're talking there about the allotments, for example, like if it was made, if that MP hadn't have said that to you, would that have happened? You wouldn't have been creating that secondary income that you talk about? Do you think hurdles are just something to get over, or are they an opportunity? I guess is what I'm driving
Well, I
at.
think you can have a look at a hurdle and a barrier. It's the same thing. We have them every day, and I would imagine certainly lots of not just young people currently in where we're at, but of all ages. It's a big barrier to get out of bed in the morning. That could be a hurdle, and I think we need to go back and look at ourselves and our own lane. Don't set these really big hurdles at the start. We've to make these small steps, and that gives us a little bit of confidence. I think lots of the hurdles around setbacks, but there's the other hurdles that you face in your life. I mean, there was lots of financial issues for doing sport and gymnastics, not being able to have the money to do it, or your parents to support you. There's the injuries. In my career of 20 years, I've had 13 operations. I mean, nobody was on the media like they are now. You look at YouTube stars. We've got athletes that have got big profiles, big sponsorship deals. I watched a really good YouTube clip yesterday around Niall Wilson talking about how he'd built his business, and he said, I remember thinking for sponsorship as a gymnast, if we got a free T-shirt, that was a big thing. And when I look back to my career, I'm thinking, yeah, if somebody sponsored me a tracksuit, I felt like I'd won the pools, I won the lottery. And he was saying, yeah, that's how it started. But because I became really successful, I had 5 or 6 sponsorship deals, and they went into 6 figures. I'm like, wow, from a time when I'd be happy if somebody give me a T-shirt to wear around the gym. So that was a real hurdle and obstacle back then around the finances. I never did gymnastics because of the financial gain, because there were no financial gain back then. And I almost think about, when I think about doing things now, my first thought is, am I going to enjoy it? Is that out of it? So think about, if you're choosing your career, if you ask a lot of people when they get older, what is it they want? And I would say time with the kids, not more time at work. So, if I said to the young people, let's say you could walk into a job when you leave school and you're on £100,000 a year salary, but for that, they will own you. And that's what tends to happen. Big companies, big salaries, they will own you. They want you working 7 days a week. They want you first thing in the morning. They want you working late at night, weekends. You literally don't have a life, but you've loads of money, all right? Or the option is, you leave school and you've got 25 grand a year. You can live comfortably and you've time to do the things you want. Meet your friends. You've got weekends off. You knock off at 5 o'clock. You can still go out and shop and eat and all that. And I think these are the things that we need to look at, and the questions that we need to ask ourselves, is where's that middle ground? What's important to you in your life? And I know you've got 2 young children, sir, just like me, and we have no time. One child's hard enough, but then we've got 2 under 3. And if somebody said to me, I'll give you more money or time, I'll take time all day long. And they're the things that I think we need to be asking ourselves when we're choosing our careers and our paths that we want to take.
Yeah, I've got there's a few questions here from students that I think are quite nice questions, actually, just about your career and all of that. So Dylan's asked, what was the most difficult competition you ever participated in?
Well, the highest level, without a doubt, would have been the Olympic Games. But yet, even though it was the biggest competition, it was the most enjoyable. And I think it was because I couldn't believe my luck. here's this skinny, puny little kid from Burnley who were told he'd never be any good at gymnastics at the Olympic Games. For me, I thought it was a once in a lifetime opportunity, which it was. And I went in there and performed, and I thought, I want to savor it. It was like your best birthday party ever. So I really enjoyed it. You know, I soaked up the atmosphere. There were 25,000 people watching, probably one of the biggest capacity audiences at a gymnastic competition at the Olympic Games. To put it in context, excuse me, at the London Olympics, we had 10,000 people watching. This was in the Sydney Superdome. There were 25,000 people, you know, and I was performing, and I'm thinking, I've spent years, and I think if you enjoy performing, and that's the thing about sport, I think how some people are brilliant at training, but that's not that good. You know, it's not great. My coach would just say to me, there's no point winning the warm-up, you know. It's being able to go and perform. It's all right being an amazing singer in your bedroom, but if you can't go out there on stage and show people what you can do, you're going to struggle a bit, you know. And for me, it was 18 years of my life for that performance, and I was going to enjoy it, and I thoroughly did. It was definitely the most enjoyable experience of my life, and I think everything came into place after that. I knew what life meant for me. You know, I performed at my best. I got my personal best. I was 32nd. That's no gold medal. That's no A star. You know, that's not first in a degree. It's 32nd. But as you touched on earlier, sir, I was in my lane, and I was I was the best I'd ever been. And for me, I think that taught me about life now. You know, I realise whatever I do, I'm not going to be the best in the world at it, but it won't stop me trying to be the best. You know, and that really helps with me mentally as well, because I can go home from any day going, I've done my best today. And I think we only struggle mentally when we've done something knowing we can do better. I think that's, you know, I wonder how many students have handed work in going, I could have probably done better than that. And as a teacher, you probably get frustrated because you see the potential in these students going, I know you could have done better than that. And when you might write, could have maybe done a bit better, what they see it as negative, going, they're getting at me. No, they're not getting at you. They just see the potential, and you're probably frustrated because you know that there's so much more, and that little bit more will open up so many more opportunities.
Yeah, and when you do that bit of work, that's the best you've done. It's and that doesn't necessarily mean schoolwork, but it's the best feeling in the world, isn't it? When you get that done and you think to yourself, that's the best I've been. There's no feeling that beats that.
I agree. I totally agree. Yeah.
So were you the opening ceremonies of Olympics are the biggest events in the world, aren't they? So were you a part of that opening ceremony?
I would like to say yes, but I didn't go.
All right. Okay.
And this is the reason being: there's 10,000 people leave the village. You all get on coaches. You go to the stadium. You sit at the back. You're all cramped up. You go out and march. You probably get back at well after midnight. Even though I knew I wasn't going to win a medal at those Olympics, gymnastics is day one of competition.
Right. Okay.
So imagine you've spent 18 years of your life for this one opportunity, performing at your best. Do you think going to bed at 1 o'clock in the morning is the best preparation? Probably not. And these are the questions that we ask ourselves. You know, it's just like going into that exam or that job interview. You know, how can we expect to perform our best in an examination if we're up at 2 o'clock in the morning watching TikTok, skipping breakfast, running late, fueled by Haribos? It just ain't going to work. And likewise, if you were going for that job interview, would you go out the night before and rock up with a hangover and not do any preparation? Well, you would if you didn't care about the result. But actually, these are the sacrifices that you have to make. So even when you get to an Olympic Games and it's the biggest party in the world, I didn't go. Everybody else went. We had a full women's team in Sydney. They all went with the team managers, tracksuits on, away. And I sat watching it on a portable TV in the village, in the house, on my own. They're the sacrifices that I believe you have to make to perform at your best. Yeah. There's a really interesting bit, and you probably touch on it with your students around marginal gains. Yeah. And that basically means all these little things add up to something. So if you said to a student, you need to improve your grade by, let's say, 5%, and the student go, 5%, that's impossible, I can't do it. But actually, if you said to your student, what we're going to do is find 10 areas and improve each of those areas by 0.5%, is that achievable? Yes. We all know that's your 5%, and that's your marginal gains. So actually, probably not going out, was probably 1%. But I ate a good meal. I didn't go to the opening ceremony. I drank plenty of water. I was well hydrated. I got up early in the morning, had a little stretch out. I had a good breakfast, and I was there mentally. All them little things, they're the things that add up, and that's the same in everything. Yeah. Every little bit of your life is those marginal gains.
Yeah, it's definitely part of our philosophy at Tanfield School, that area of marginal gains. Mrs. Stephen asked, why artistic gymnastics, and was there a favourite piece of equipment that you enjoyed using?
Well, artistic gymnastics was the only discipline in gymnastics that was being done at my local leisure centre. Artistic is both men's and women. They have rhythmic gymnastics, which is all about flexibility, hoops and ribbons. That's girls. They do sports acrobatics, so you might do that in a group, and that's on the floor exercise. But that just wasn't done. I mean, we're going back to our 1973, so I started in the 80s. Gymnastics was not that, a popular sport back then. So it was just what was going on. My favourite apparatus, wow. To be honest, I quite like them all, and I think I was an all-arounder. I wasn't a Max Whitlock or a Lewis Smith that was really good on the pommel horse. I was a bit of an all-round person. I think that was one of my strengths. I know I didn't really like the pommel horse. That was my least favourite. My rings, I quite like that. And that was my highest scoring piece of apparatus in the Olympics. I think in the world, I was about 10th on the rings. But then other pieces went lower. And so that's why you end up, I was good at one, averaged. But I was pretty consistent. I think that's the key. And I was consistent in my performances, so I knew roughly what I would score, and I challenged one of my coaches to what I'd score through planning. And I hit that score. He said I wouldn't score. Somebody else, you'll not do that. And I'd planned, and I said, I reckon I could score 55.3 if I hit my best. And I scored 55.343. So this is another bit. I mean, we could talk about loads of stuff, and I know I've been rabbiting on loads, but actually, planning's really important. I believe in life, whatever you do, it would be unrealistic for me to say at the Olympic Games, I'm going to score 58 out of 60. Knowing full well, if I'd taken all my scores from a best competition, I'd never got 58. And so I'd worked out from all my best competitions on each piece of apparatus that if I hit, I'd score 55.3. I think, when we took a goal setting and we've got targets, they need to be realistic. They need to be smart goals. They need to be achievable. Because the problem is, if we have loads of goals which are not achievable, it can have that a negative effect. Because then we're going, well, I'm constantly failing. Failure's good, but we shouldn't constantly be failing. I think we should set some stuff in there. It's a little bit easier, make us feel good, because you need that bit of positivity. I think
Yeah.
that's really key. So rings was one of my strongest pieces of apparatus. I did quite like the high bar, because that's about swinging around the bar, and you let go, you do release and catches. I just love the thrill of it all, to be honest. I like flying through the air. I like the jeopardy, the fact that you might fall off, that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it always whenever I see it on TV, it always looks, those ones, especially like the rings when you have to land at the end, and the bars. It looks really dangerous. Are you kind of someone who's into the extreme sport and side of things anyway? Or
no, I think as I've got older, I've realised what could happen if it goes wrong. I think when I was young, I was a bit naive, and I used to throw myself at everything. I remember I used to do trampolining as a kid, and I was into diving. And in our leisure centre, I think we had the first, like, a diving pool for miles around. But because we trained in the centre, they go, we knew all the staff, oh, you can go on the diving boards. And I remember just jumping off like 3 meters, tucking up as much as I could, and try and do as many somersaults before I hit the water. And I look at that now and thinking, how insane's that? You get the old back splat, and you'd be like, oh. I look at it now, I'd look at 3 meters and think, well, I might just jump in feet first. But I think when you're young, you've got that, I think you're a bit fearless, aren't you? And think, yeah, I'll do it. So certainly as I got older, I became a bit more fearful, or a bit more sensible.
yeah. And what you're up to now? So you've kind of alluded to the fact that you're managing your own business there. Can you just give us a bit of an insight into the type of things you do?
Yeah. So when I retired from gymnastics, I started coaching gymnastics up in Newcastle. I sort of realised after a little bit of time that it was probably a bit soon to coach in gymnastics, and I realised actually I don't want to coach at a high level. I've done it for 20 years. Not at that high level, but it's quite time consuming as well. Coaching any sport, especially gymnastics, quite antisocial, because it's nights and weekends. And so that it was through that experience that I realised, you know what, this is not what I want for my life going forward. I want to have a bit more freedom. I got involved in mentoring young people through the Youth Sport Trust, and I think that's how I got into Tanfield originally. And I really liked helping other people. That was something I really enjoyed. I always thought in the back of my mind that I'd like to have my own gymnastic centre, and then I realised I wanted a family, and the mentoring started taking me all over the country, and I realised actually it's not much fun sitting in a hotel room on your own for a week away, from your family, and waving, your little boy's waving to you and he's crying, and you're thinking, what am I doing? So what can I do to bring my life back to my family? So there was an opportunity to apply for some funding. So the actual gymnastics centre, it took 3 years from the initial concept, the idea, to getting the funding, to putting the business plan together, to find the right building. We opened in January last year. It was to say that would be 3 months from a world pandemic, and we've been closed more than we've been open. But yet again, I've seen that as an opportunity to make changes to the building, because even though we were only open 10 weeks before we closed, I got to see how the customers moved around the building and how it worked, and what worked well and what didn't. So when people came back, they're like, wow, you've done all these changes. This is much better. And I've done the same idea now. So we're doing stuff outside. So when people come back, I want them to go, wow, we didn't even know you had this space outside, and we've used that. So I've got my gymnastics centre. I've been lucky enough to get involved in commentating on the gymnastics. So my first event was for 5 Live on the radio in London 2012. I did radio and TV commentary in Brazil, in Rio. I did the Commonwealths for TV and World Championships now. I was due to go to Tokyo last year for television, but that got cancelled. I'm praying that the games go ahead this year, because I'm desperate to go to Tokyo. I want to go, and I think if they postpone it now, it'll get cancelled. I don't think they'll put it till next year. I think that'll be it, because next year will be the Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. So there's a small part of my life is my commentary stuff, which I absolutely love. This is something else which is not about the money. It's about, yes, I get paid, but what I try and do is the money I make from doing it, I'll spend while I'm there. So when I went to Canada for a competition, I flew off to Niagara Falls because I wanted to see Niagara Falls. When I went to the Commonwealth, I stopped on for another week. I had friends from Burnley that were in Melbourne on the go. I travelled and saw them. I've got things that I want to go and see in Tokyo and things like that. So that's something that I'm really passionate about. I have my allotment business, which has grown from strength to strength. That's nearly full. I have a bit of a farm school back in Lancashire. That's another area that I want to develop with a friend of mine who's one at Director. We're talking about developing that, and also these areas having multiple incomes, and they're not massive. I'll tell people there, I am not a millionaire. I'm a million miles from a millionaire, but it's the marginal gains, little bits. So if one's not doing well, the other one will do little bits and stuff like that. And for me, it's about providing a future for my children so I can have time with them. I don't want to be a dad that's too busy working. I want to be there. That choice, as I talked about at the start.
Yeah, and I think your whole story kind of exemplifies that thing that we talked about in terms of lifelong learning and continuing to invest in yourself and to build those skills up and to stay in your lane and to keep improving and progressing, not just through school but also throughout your career, throughout your life. So it's been amazing to hear that, Craig, and thanks for joining us and sharing your wisdom and your thoughts with us.
Well, thank you very much. I was talking to one of the directors outside, and I said, I don't know how long this is going to last. Probably, I think it's half an hour, but I know I talk forever, and I think we've been probably an hour. But this is what I'm passionate about, and it's about trying to help other people to become the best version of themselves. It's a bit of a cliche, and I've been in hundreds, if not thousands, of schools, and it's be the best you can be, and people go, it's a bit of a cliche that, but not really. I think if we can be a little bit better than we were yesterday, and we're only talking a little bit, there's 365 days in a year. Imagine that over a decade, how far we could come if we want to learn, and we want to develop ourselves. So thank you so much. I've enjoyed being involved with Tanfield in the past. I can't wait to get back to normal. I can't wait to get away from Zoom calls and stuff like this. But yet again, it just goes to prove that this is another hurdle in life, and how well people have been at overcoming, and actually the school children, when they go back, actually go, well, school's not too bad. I prefer it to being sat at home watching it on a monitor, and we often take for granted the things that's been taken away from us over the last year. So it's a good time to reset and think, you know, there's light at the end of the tunnel now. How fortunate we are. You know, we've had a pretty rough year, but there's a real opportunity and there's light at the end of the tunnel, you know, and let's dig deep now and come out of this, wherever it's through our schooling, exams or whatever, to make that difference. So thank you. Best of luck to everybody. Best wishes to all the staff at Tanfield. Keep up the great work. Students, keep going. Dig deep.
Thanks, Craig. Cheers.